I never thought my 24th birthday would be the day my entire family's lies unraveled. I still remember the look on my grandfather's face, calm, almost playful, as he leaned across the long dining table, his glass of red wine reflecting the chandelier light, and asked me one simple question. "Is the apartment comfortable, Adrian?" My stomach twisted, because I had no idea what he was talking about. My name is Adrian Carter, and I grew up thinking I was just the quiet middle child of a wealthy family. My parents always said money was complicated, so I learned not to ask too many questions. I was raised in privilege, yes, but always with restrictions. They told me I had to earn my place, so while my friends were traveling abroad or buying cars in college, I was working late shifts at a bookstore to cover gas and groceries. I thought that was normal. What I didn't know was that my grandfather, Jonathan Carter, a self-made billionaire who built an empire in real estate, had created trust funds for all of his grandchildren. He believed wealth should be used responsibly, so the money was locked away until we reached certain milestones, graduation, turning 21, or in my case, turning 24. But no one ever told me. If you are enjoying this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey of betrayal and unexpected revenge. That birthday dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the night my parents' carefully woven web of lies began to collapse. The tension had been building for years, though. Looking back now, I can see all the little betrayals, the small red flags I ignored. Like when I graduated college. My cap and gown sat untouched in the corner of my room because I couldn't even afford professional photos. My parents didn't show up to the ceremony. When I asked them why, my mom sighed, "Adrian, we've done enough for you already. Don't make everything about money." Or when my older sister, Vanessa, posted photos of herself in Paris, dripping in designer clothes, smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower. I remember asking her how she afforded it, and she laughed. "Daddy takes care of me. Maybe he doesn't trust you the same way." At the time, I brushed it off as sibling rivalry. But then there was the apartment situation. Vanessa once let it slip that she had her own place downtown, a 2-bedroom loft with exposed brick and a view of the skyline. Meanwhile, I was crammed into a shoebox apartment, splitting rent with 2 roommates, stretching dollar bills at the end of every month. When I asked my parents about it, my dad's response was sharp. "You need to stop comparing yourself to your sister. Life isn't fair. Work harder." That sentence stuck to me like glue. Still, I didn't question them. I kept my head down. I worked, I saved what I could, and I convinced myself that maybe one day things would change. But then came my birthday dinner. We were seated at my grandfather's estate, this massive mansion with marble floors and walls of glass overlooking the city. The whole family was there, my parents, my sister Vanessa, my younger brother Max, and of course, Grandpa Jonathan, who had always been a man of few but powerful words. The evening was stiff. My parents acted overly cheerful, clinking glasses, while Vanessa flaunted her latest designer bag. Max kept scrolling on his phone, ignoring me as usual. I tried to enjoy it. I really did. Then, halfway through dessert, my grandfather leaned toward me with that knowing smile and asked, "So, Adrian, is the apartment comfortable?" The room fell silent. I blinked at him. "Apartment?" He tilted his head, confused by my confusion. "Yes, the one under your name. The trust released it to you last year." The air shifted instantly. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's face turned pale, then red. Vanessa's smirk vanished. I don't know what you mean," I stammered. That's when my grandfather's eyes narrowed. He didn't raise his voice, but there was a heaviness in his tone. "Adrian, don't tell me you haven't been living there." I felt my chest tighten. "No, I haven't." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the ornate grandfather clock in the corner. Then, slowly, my grandfather set his wine glass down. Interesting. Because according to the records, that apartment has been occupied for over a year now. I turned toward my parents. My dad cleared his throat. My mom avoided eye contact. That was the moment everything started unraveling. And I wish I could tell you I calmly asked questions, that I held myself together. But the truth? My hands were trembling so hard I had to grip the edge of the table just to steady myself. Occupied? By who? I finally managed to ask. No one answered. But Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. And suddenly, the dots began to connect. Her expensive trips. Her designer clothes. The loft apartment I once asked her about. It wasn't hers. It was mine. That realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. My sister had been living in the apartment my grandfather intended for me. And my parents? They had let her. The silence at that table was suffocating. I could hear the faint hum of the chandelier above us, the distant barking of dogs in the courtyard outside, even the nervous tapping of Vanessa's manicured nails against her wine glass. But what I didn't hear? The truth. So I asked again. Louder this time. Who's been living in my apartment? Vanessa glanced at my mother like a child caught red-handed. My dad's jaw was clenched so tightly, I thought he might crack a tooth. My grandfather sat back in his chair, his eyes fixed on me, waiting. And then it slipped out. Vanessa let out a nervous laugh and muttered under her breath, "Well, it's not like you were using it anyway." Her words sliced through me. I turned to her. "Excuse me?" She rolled her eyes. "Come on, Adrian. You wouldn't even know what to do with that place. You barely make enough to keep your car running. At least I put it to good use." My hands balled into fists under the table. Every late night I had spent shelving books, every time I skipped meals just to cover rent, every time I told myself my parents loved me equally, it all flashed in front of me. And then came the final blow. My dad finally spoke, his voice sharp, defensive. "Adrian, stop making this a scene. We did what was best. Vanessa needed the apartment more than you. She's building a career. You've always been the quiet one. You don't need much." I don't think I'll ever forget those words. You don't need much. As if my entire existence didn't matter. As if my hard work, my sacrifices, my very future could be brushed aside just because I wasn't loud enough, or flashy enough, or enough. I felt my throat tighten. "So, you stole from me?" My mother finally looked up, her face a mask of fake sympathy. "Adrian, it's not stealing. Families share. Besides, you should be grateful. We've always given you a roof over your head." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the only thing keeping me from exploding. A roof over my head? You mean the one I paid for with 2 roommates in a dingy apartment while you let Vanessa live in mine? The room was cracking open now. Max, my younger brother, shifted uncomfortably, mumbling, I didn't know." But he didn't look at me. He didn't defend me. He just went back to scrolling his phone like none of this mattered. And that's when my grandfather finally spoke again. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Adrian," he said, "stand up for a moment." Confused, I pushed back my chair and rose to my feet. Grandpa Jonathan's gaze swept over me, then moved slowly to my parents. "Do you see him?" he asked them. My dad frowned. "Of course we do. What kind of question is that?" My grandfather's tone hardened. "No. I don't think you do. Because if you did, you wouldn't have treated him as invisible. You wouldn't have let your daughter steal what was rightfully his." That was the breaking point. The masks came off. My father's face twisted with anger. "Dad, don't make this into something it's not. We made a decision for the family. That money, that apartment, it's just numbers on paper to Adrian. He's not cut out for." "Enough." The word came like a hammer from my grandfather's mouth. Sharp. Final. I'd seen my grandfather angry before, but never like this. His knuckles pressed against the polished wood of the table, his posture rigid, his voice carrying decades of authority. "You don't make decisions with money that isn't yours. That trust was mine to give. And I gave it to Adrian. Not Vanessa. Not you. Adrian." The silence that followed felt like the whole house was holding its breath. But inside me, something had already broken. I looked at my parents, people I had trusted my entire life, and all I saw were strangers. Strangers who had chosen favorites. Strangers who had robbed me, not just of an apartment, but of dignity, of years of struggle I never should have endured. And Vanessa? She didn't even look sorry. She crossed her arms, lips pursed, like she was the real victim. "You act like it's such a big deal," she muttered. "You wouldn't last a week in that apartment anyway. It's not your style." That was it. The sting, the betrayal, the years of swallowing my pride, all of it boiled over. I leaned forward, my voice steady but trembling with fury. "You lived in my apartment. You wore clothes I should have been able to buy. You traveled the world while I scraped pennies together for rent. And all this time, you let me believe I wasn't enough, that I just needed to work harder. Do you know what that does to someone? Do you know how small that makes a person feel?" No one answered. Not my parents. Not Vanessa. But my grandfather? He was listening. And I could tell this wasn't over. And that's when something shifted in me. The pain was still there, yes. The betrayal burned deep. But beneath it, something else sparked alive. A kind of quiet rage mixed with resolve. Because if my own family could betray me this deeply, then maybe, just maybe, it was time I stopped waiting for their approval. Maybe it was time I found my own way forward. But I had no idea just how far my grandfather was willing to go to make things right. My grandfather didn't explode, didn't yell, didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, folded his hands over his chest, and said in the calmest tone imaginable, "Adrian, sit down. It's time you know the truth." I lowered myself back into the chair, every muscle in my body tense. He turned to my parents first. "For years, I've watched you favor Vanessa. I gave you both opportunities. I trusted you to raise my grandchildren with fairness. And yet, you've robbed one to spoil another. Do you realize what you've done?" My father stammered. "Dad, please, you're blowing this out of proportion. It's just one apartment." My grandfather cut him off with a wave of his hand. "It's not about the apartment. It's about integrity. About loyalty. About betraying your own son." Then he looked at me. His eyes softened, but there was steel underneath. "Adrian, I need you to hear me. That apartment was never meant to be Vanessa's. It was yours. And not only that, your trust fund is still intact. Every cent. I kept a close eye on it, because I had a suspicion your parents might interfere." My heart nearly stopped. My trust fund? He nodded. Yes. And it's worth far more than you realize. The color drained from my parents' faces. Vanessa's lips parted, like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. That's when my grandfather delivered the final blow. As of tonight, he said, his voice echoing across the dining hall, I am transferring full control of your assets directly into your name, Adrian. The apartment, the accounts, the investments. Everything. You will no longer depend on your parents for a thing. I could barely breathe. For years, I had been living like I was disposable, like I was the least important member of my own family. And in one moment, my grandfather stripped away their control and handed me back my power. My father shot up from his seat, his chair scraping against the marble floor. You can't do this. We are his parents. We have every right to. No. The word was sharp, final. You had your chance, Grandpa Jonathan said coldly. And you abused it. From now on, you have no say in Adrian's future. None. My mother tried a different tactic, her voice suddenly sugar-sweet. Dad, please, you don't understand. We were only trying to help him. Help him? My grandfather's voice thundered. By stealing from him? By humiliating him while his sister paraded around in what wasn't hers? No. I will not hear another word. And Vanessa? She slammed her glass down, her voice dripping with entitlement. This is so unfair. I've been using that apartment for over a year. You can't just throw me out. My grandfather turned his icy gaze on her. You should have thought of that before you accepted what wasn't yours. Actions have consequences, Vanessa. Consider this your first lesson in accountability. She gasped, eyes wide. You're seriously going to take his side? Yes, he said without hesitation. Because he's the one who was wronged. And I won't reward greed. The room fractured after that. My father muttered curses under his breath. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Vanessa stormed out, heels clicking against the marble. But me? I sat there in silence, staring at the tablecloth, my mind spinning. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me. Later that night, as I stood outside on the balcony overlooking the city, my grandfather joined me. He placed a hand on my shoulder, firm and steady. You deserved better, Adrian, he said softly. But sometimes betrayal is the greatest teacher. Now you know who truly stands with you, and who doesn't. I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. Why did you wait until now? He sighed. Because I needed you to see it for yourself. Strength isn't given. It's forged in fire. And tonight, you've been through the fire. I nodded slowly, the truth of his words settling deep inside me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Vanessa moved out of the apartment in tears, her social media posts suddenly less flashy. My parents tried to call, to guilt-trip me into understanding, but I didn't answer. I moved into the apartment that had always been mine, furnished it with my own taste, and for the first time, I felt free. I wasn't rich because of the money. I was rich because I finally had control. Because I finally knew my worth. Looking back now, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel clarity. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you will betray you, not because you're weak, but because they think you won't notice. They mistake silence for ignorance. They mistake kindness for weakness. But when the truth finally comes out, it's powerful enough to change everything. So let me ask you, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have walked away, just like I did?